We've been around the country with this, and we're getting many questions. In fact, we've had to stop the questions short. So just, I'm sure you've got a few things you'd like to ask. Yes, over here. Thank you.
We have a winner.
Yeah, just interested to know what fibre to the home is going to do to retailing, given we've already got a lot of online shopping, how it might change the way people buy and the sort of things that they're prepared to buy over the internet.
Bernard, that sounds like one for you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for your question. What it's going to do for retailers? It is basically the customer will have a better view of what they're buying, and they have more confidence on buying the item. So you buy things right now, you get a photograph. You view something on the net, it's a photograph, maybe a few photographs. But later on, with the advancement of 3D imaging, interactive colors and stuff like that, the consumer will have a more in-depth knowledge of the product before they purchase it. Hence, a confidence is there when they hit the button purchase, they know what they're going to get. So that is the new connection that fibre, or basically new bandwidth, is going to give the retailers to connect with the customers. So it's really, the experience is different.
I think one, and it's not just for retailing, but for almost any industry where the customer could access the service, the product, the item over the internet, you've got to answer one question, which is, so what value do we add by having our physical store, by having trained staff, by having people who can give advice? Travel industry's been through this. Many industries will go through this. And I think the key is that I think the real business efficiency opportunity is having people working on the same system. So, the idea of a retail environment where you've got staff who are working with some sort of tablet device who can show you stock, can show you specs, can talk you through things on the same system you might be able to see on the web. And then it'll come down to, do people value that educated person's advice as much as they value being able to see the facts, figures and images on the internet? And I think that's the constant challenge for anyone who is reselling a service that's coming from a core producer or manufacturer, is what value do I add to it? Then how do I use the internet, the ability to present information to add value to that?
Bernard's presentation, the IKEA slide, I think is a really good example. Transforms catalogues completely if you can revolve those images in 3D and the like, and really look at the product. Good question. Next question, please. Over here. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I'm just wondering where the new bottlenecks will be on our network. So if we put ultra-fast broadband into my home, are we making a bottleneck somewhere else on the network?
We'll work our way back.
Okay. So the access network is simply sold on speed. So the pipes are open from a capacity point of view, but the speed is limited. So your entry point is 30 down, 10 up, I think it is, in GPON speed, right through to 1 gig. So then that takes you all the way back to the central office. Each candidate area has one location where service providers can pick that up, and the handovers are pretty much dark fibre, open bandwidth fibre access. So then once it hits the service provider network, that's up to them. Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Yeah.
We used to be so close.
Just to add to that one, that's going upstream. Going downstream itself, the next bottleneck will be your home networking.
Good answer.
So when you have the fibre into the home, how are you going to distribute it throughout the house? Wi-Fi, broadband or power line, or even fibre in your home. So that will be the next bottleneck that you'll be looking at.
I'm going to be told off for not mentioning that, actually. Yeah. Yes. Wiring in your home is so important. Oh, not by Chris, by my colleagues. Wiring in your home is so important. We're going to deliver fibre to a device that sits on the wall, and what it connects to is the next critical piece for you to get the best service out of it.
And I think there may be a lurking question there about Southern Cross or about New Zealand's connection to the world. There may have been a hidden way of going at that. Look, we've had that question at almost every one of these, and it's the right question for people to ask. all of the speakers have talked about the way in which applications are being made so much more efficient. A number will have mentioned local caching of content and material. And at the end of the day, New Zealand's access to the world is a simple supply-demand equation. And there is constant conversation about a couple of potential investments being made in that to enter the market as competitors. And like everything we do, at the end of the day, people will decide whether they think there's enough opportunity to stump up capital and invest. And the current player, being Southern Cross, will decide whether they want to open capacity or change price in order to compete. And I think that dynamic will continue, at pace, and that's all good for organisations and users. And I think that the key thing we'd keep reminding people is the internet isn't free. Cisco aren't giving the boxes away, neither anyone else. Any infrastructure we rent and buy, at the end of the day, someone builds and you pay a price for it, and you've got to take the bets on whether you can get enough traffic across it. And it's just a model that will keep carrying on as demand grows. And there's no doubt if people want more of that, then investors will show up and build more. Paul, sorry, I interrupted you.
I was going to say exactly that international traffic is going to be the next area of challenge for us, I think. The next potential bottleneck. I don't know the answer, but I think that's going to be a challenge.
Another question? Over here, yep.
Hi, there's a lot of technology industry experience up there. I'm interested in understanding how the decision-making process has changed and evolved over time around capital expenditure in technology. Obviously, it's a little harder at times to put your finger on an ROI for an enabling technology investment. How are you approaching those technology investments?
Paul, that might be a good one for you.
Happy to address that. I think we're getting a better understanding of how to factor in indirect benefits, and it's always been a challenge of IT that the benefits that flow from it are typically indirect benefits. The video conferencing decision we had to make, a little bit like VM, actually, you can pretty much justify it on hard benefits, and everything else is just fuel to that fire. But the answer to your question more generally is to get better at understanding how the bits of technology that you're responsible for deliver to the frontline business.
And John?
And for us, there was an investment, but what you've got to look at is our number 8 wire approach to our data services, to we're competing globally, and therefore how do we deliver those services? So you really got to make sure you're comparing apples with apples. And so for our move, it wasn't about replicating what we had, but saying what do we need to have? And at that point in time, the numbers just stack up so easily. So I think the key thing is when you look competing because of the fibre, you're actually competing on an international market, so you need to benchmark yourselves not just domestically but internationally.
And it has an impact on carriers and telcos and ICT service providers as well, because the time frames are getting much shorter. So, most clients are thinking about 3 years, not 5 years for any commitments. So that changes your thinking about capital and infrastructure and how it's recovered. And secondly, placing bets right now about which technologies will survive. Telco used to be like work it out for a year, build it once, get a return for 10 years. All those time frames have changed fundamentally now back to 1, 2, 3 year type timeframes. And for that reason, you're much more likely to partner, you're much more likely to build carefully and with upgrade in mind and with much faster recycling of the various assets in mind.
Thank you for those answers. And another question, please. And while you're waiting, while an answer has been given, if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll be ready for you. Well, while you're thinking about that, I have asked, we have one down here, thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, guys. I would just like to find out about the data caps on the network. Will that be lifted in the future? Because my personal opinion is that, especially for small business, is that the data caps that's in place the business is not growing the speed they should have been, but I could be growing, if that makes sense.
Sure, they're all looking at Andrew and I. So look, data caps, first thing to remember, people, I sometimes get a feeling from people they regard it as us stopping people using more data. Data caps is a response to people's wish to have some cost control. And I think we've got to remember that the network infrastructure is no different to any other infrastructure, whether it be trains, planes, infrastructure as a service data centre or network, there is capital required to keep building out what's available, and then you've got to take the risk on will enough users show up to use it. So you start thinking your way through that. Over time, there is no question the data caps will either be lifted or removed or repriced in different ways. I can guarantee that's the trend you will see. But it's also, at the moment, it's felt to be what most customers want in terms of a user pays approach is that the users who use the most pay the most, and that there is some form of control of that. And I think we've seen other countries around the world, and some of these gentlemen might comment, where all you can eat, particularly mobile data, has been introduced, then withdrawn because it drives the wrong sort of behaviours and the wrong sort of sustainability in the market, and you have to come back to people paying for what they use. But there's, you would be silly to deny that there's going to be a lot more available for the same or less that you pay today. There's no question that'll be the trend.
As a customer, I'm on an uncapped plan, but it works out. We can do the numbers, and it makes perfect sense. The overages were just killing us. So, Gen-i already offer a uncapped, and ours is a direct connection to the global gateway. So, for an international business, it's perfect.
Thank you, John. Another question, please. Yes, over here.
Just a question really around, Dr. Bernard-Lee spoke about the construction aspect of getting fibre in as being a real challenge. Is there anything that's being done to make it easier for businesses to get fibre in to where they need it? I'm not just talking outside the gate, right into their business and ready to go.
Thank you for the question. You may have seen in my slides there are two examples in Taiwan and Korea, where you actually have the builders pre-installing fiber when the building is built. That's one way. And there are a lot of innovative products out there that will help to reuse existing ducts if they are not collapsed. So to push a very small fiber, well protected, into the home and deliver the service. This thing, if you have a clearance of 5 centimeters, you'll go through. Right? There's a lot of innovative products out there, but it's not a long-term solution. The long-term solution has to be a partnership between the builders who are building the buildings itself, and infrastructure builders, and the service providers to do it together. If not, the cost of trenching, the cost of opening manhole, that is where the cost is, not the material. So it has to be, once planned properly, you'll reduce the cost. Okay. Is that all right? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Another question, please. Well, while you're thinking, I will ask that question I was going to ask to Dr. Bernard-Lee, just a little bit about the utilization of fibre and how we light that fibre up to get maximum speed from it.
Okay. You're coming around with the DWDM question, is it, Damon? Thank you. Interestingly, a lot of fibres that you put in today, it's no different from the fibres you put in 20 years ago, but the capacity keeps on increasing. One of the techniques that fiber manufacturers or equipment manufacturers do is DWDM, dense wavelength division multiplexing. The idea is multiplexing, putting multiple colors of laser that holds the data into one single fiber. Okay. Traditionally, one fiber, one color. Now you can go up to 96, even 128. 256 is being tested. So one fiber keep increasing in bandwidth equal to the number of colors you put in, like a rainbow. So it's basically having a rainbow into a fiber. That one fiber itself could do 1 terabit per second, or even tens of terabits per second. So wherever you invest in fiber today, that is going to grow for the next 50 years. The same technology is used in the backhaul. Submarine cables between continents is used within a country. And most recently, fiber to the home has had a standard to utilize that into your access cable.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer. And of course, a particular fiber cable has many strands of fiber within it.
That's correct.
So we're talking about massive bandwidth capability. Down here?
Hi there. I believe that Chorus and Huawei are using the CourseWave technology together. Will an investigation by the government into security regarding Huawei affect the build-out for this at all?
I'm not going to make any comment about the government's position. We're using Huawei equipment in our rural broadband build, and that's the only place we're using them at the moment. That's all I can say.
Okay. Again, I'm not allowed to comment on that one. But bear in mind that Huawei is the #1 telecom equipment provider. I'm sure there's ways around it. Okay, thank you.
Another question over here? Is there? No? Here we go.
Bearing in mind the extent of fibre deployment in Asia, what do you think that is going to have on effect that is going to have on sort of global economic balances and changes that we're likely to see, say, over the next 5 years or so? What, you know, the rate of deployment of fibre, is there any research or background which may indicate a change in some of the global economic factors that we could see affecting us down here?
I'll take that question. Okay. A lot of the global economy used to be defined or even controlled by economics that has a way of reaching to the customer. Okay, so if you control the Silk Road previously, or the routes, the spice route or something. So fiber is the next route. It enables anybody who has a broadband connection to reach to the potential customers. So hence, it's not limited by what resources you have, but the creativity that you have within that country or that region. So being, well, for example, New Zealand itself is, well, like I say, logistically it may not be most effective, but with this new fiber connection, this new bandwidth, you can reach anywhere in the world and in seconds. So if you read the book called The World is Flat, this is what's happening. Fiber and technology data is flattening the playing ground, so everybody has an equal chance in terms of economics.
And I would say having customers up through Asia, you might be putting fibre through, but they face the same issues around connections out of their countries. It's incredibly variable. We have to route traffic up through Japan to certain countries because things just don't work all that well through some of the connections. So they face the same systems and issues that we face here in New Zealand.
I think from if my memory serves me right, at the ComCom conference, the UFB conference, I'm pretty sure it was Alcatel-Lucent had done a bit of research in that space. And if my memory serves me right, for every 10% increase in just rural broadband penetration, there was about a 0.2% lift in GDP. So if you've got 50% penetration and you go to 55, that lifts you by about 0.2%. So if you're thinking about rural numbers, I'm pretty sure that they've done some work about that.
Well, let's close the panel at that. Thank you very much to the panel.
Thank you.